where if you've got, like, say, a fleet of 100 million vehicles.
Hey, this is Warren Redlick. Elon Musk just spoke at some length at the 1010 We Robot event. I was a little disappointed. I saw some great things that were going on in that event. I wanted to share with you what I saw. Let's start with the Cybercab. This is the one thing that probably stood out more than anything else. This is a vehicle that Tesla intends to start manufacturing by the end of 2026. It appears to be a two-passenger vehicle with a lot of storage area in the back. This would work well as a robotaxi driving people from point A to point B, as long as it's one or two people going for the ride, which is about 80 to 90% of all rides are one or two people, maybe 90%. And then the large storage area in the back would allow it to take on a Uber Eats, Grab food type of service where deliveries. So you might have an Optimus in the vehicle. The vehicle is carrying a bunch of things and a bunch of different packages for a bunch of different addresses. The car drives to the address. Optimus gets out, takes the appropriate package, delivers it at the door, and hops back in. That may be an intended use of Cybercab. About the vehicle, they didn't give us any specs. My sense, I'm very strongly opinionated. I know the Tesla team knows better than I do. My own take when I look at this is it's bigger than I expected it would be. It looks like it weighs more than I expected it to weigh. Looks like it has more frontal surface area, and based on what Elon said, which you hear later, I think it costs more than I expected it to cost. About $30,000 is the number he said, and I thought they were shooting for $20,000. So what my expectations were, a little narrower, a little shorter, less weight. Maybe, I don't know, this looks pretty aerodynamic. A lot of people are unsure about whether these doors make sense. We don't know whether that's serious or whether they're really going forward with those doors. I think the wheels are very large, and if I was making a vehicle aiming for efficiency and long life and low cost per mile, I think these are 21-inch wheels. I would probably use 15-inch wheels. I think that would be a lot more efficient. Are they going to design the vehicle so it actually covers the wheels to some extent to reduce drag and get you a better coefficient of drag? It doesn't look like this is final engineering. This looks like this, although they had 20 of them on the lot at Warner Brothers. So that's kind of interesting. And the other thing that was kind of cool was they showed the Cybervan, or the Robovan. Elon called it Robovan, but Robovan. And we'll see more about that shortly. But a vehicle that can seat maybe 20 people, and probably intended both for sort of like a minibus usage as well as commercial van usage. This looks like about the right size to be a commercial van, Mercedes Sprinter, Ford Sprinter type of van. That's a big market. That's probably more than 1 million units a year sold worldwide. So if they could capture 20% of that market, that would be amazing. That would be a really big boost. But there was no timeline for this vehicle, so I think this is further down the road, and you'll see the sides of this vehicle, the ground clearance is very, very limited. So the actual vehicle would not look like this, I don't think. This is more of a prototype that's not going to be manufactured to look like this. But we'll see more.
Your average passenger car is only used about 10 hours a week out of 168 hours. So the vast majority of the time, cars are just doing nothing. But if they're autonomous, they could be used, 5 times more, maybe 10 times more.
That's the first time I've heard Elon say that. He said 5 times more. The typical car is used 2 hours a day, and a robotaxi would be used 10 hours a day. That's 5 times as much. I think it's a little less than 2 hours a day for the regular car, and less than 10 hours a day for robotaxi. I see robotaxi running from 6 a.m. to midnight. That's 18 hours a day. So that's 9 times as much or more usage of a regular car. And that delivers even more. He says it, he'll say in a minute. Let's listen to this.
You could actually, for the same car, would have 5 times as much value, maybe 10 times as much value. There's 168 hours in the week. And like I said, only 10 of them are used for driving.
So when he says 5 or 10 times as much value, it's actually even more value because your car doesn't drive itself. So not only does the car get used 10 times as much, but it drives itself, so you don't have to pay a driver. So the value is even more than 10 times the value of an ordinary car. So this is very promising. It's probably not going to drive in the middle of the night. You're probably going to expect robotaxis are going to charge for over the course of 6 hours from midnight to 6 a.m. Let's say the vast majority of the robotaxis will spend their time charging. There won't be a lot of rides after midnight. There won't be a lot of, some places there'll be rides till 2 a.m. or something like that, when you have like a hectic nightlife place. But the vast majority of people are home by midnight. So the number of rides is going to decline after midnight. Maybe Friday and Saturday nights in some areas like Miami, there's still going to be a lot of activity. We'll see.
And then a bunch of those hours are looking for a parking spot, which is, can be pretty annoying at times.
That's an important point. When we have our cars and we drive 2 hours a day or 10 hours a week or whatever, some of that time is spent doing stuff that won't be necessary for Robotaxi. Robotaxi won't have to look for parking. Now, on the other hand, the Robotaxi has to drive to the next ride. And we pick up our car and we drive where we want to go, and then we walk in and we drive back out. So there's not a lot of unpaid miles or unused miles, useless miles in a regular vehicle. Searching for parking, yeah, there's some other issues, but there's a trade-off there. The Robotaxi doesn't have to look for parking, so it doesn't waste time there, but it does have to get from ride 1 to ride 2, and that's a little bit of dead miles.
I think the cost of autonomous transport will be so low that you can think of it like individualized mass transit. The average cost of a bus per mile for a city, not the ticket price because that is subsidized, but the average price is about $1 a mile. Whereas the cost of Cybercab, we think probably over time, from the operating cost is probably going to be around 20 cents a mile. And price, including taxes and everything else, probably ends up being 30 or 40 cents a mile.
Interesting take from Elon here. Now, if you go back to Autonomy Day, he described the cost per mile of Model 3 at the time at 18 cents a mile. So for Cybercab to be 20 cents a mile is a little disturbing. I was hoping Cybercab would make progress and we would see Cybercab drop the cost per mile. And we want to distinguish, there's the cost per mile driven and there's the cost per paid mile. If the vehicle drives, I think the expectation would be somewhere in the ballpark of 50% of miles driven by a robotaxi are paid miles. You're taking somebody from point A to point B. And some of the miles are unpaid miles. You're going to pick up the next ride and you don't get paid for the trip from the last ride to the next ride. You're driving to go charge. You're driving to wherever you're going to pause for the night, or wherever you're going to take a break. Those are unpaid miles. So my gut hunch is somewhere in the ballpark of 50 to 60% of miles are paid. Now, when Elon says 20 cents a mile, the way he said it, it sounds like it's 20 cents per mile, all in miles. And I was surprised by that, because if Model 3 works out to, over the life of the vehicle, let's say a Model 3 is going to last 500,000 miles, and let's say it costs $40,000, and you work out the cost of electricity and the cost of tires and everything else. The estimate he had back in 2019 or so was 18 cents a mile. Maybe it was 2018 for Autonomy Day. So for Cybercab to not improve on that and actually get worse is a little disturbing. Cybercab should cost less than a Model 3, and he said $30,000. Model 3 at the time, they were hoping for $35,000. Cybercab should probably last longer. If it's going to use lithium iron phosphate batteries or newest battery technology, the battery should last longer. You would think it would be engineered better to be more durable. So less maintenance would be required. There's a lot of reasons why you would expect Cybercab to be lower cost per mile. So I was a little surprised by him saying 20 cents a mile. And just for example, if Cybercab is $30,000 and it drives 1 million miles, that works out to 3 cents a mile for amortizing the cost of the car if you don't account for interest. If a Model 3 is 4.6 miles per kilowatt hour, and this new Cybercab is 6 miles per kilowatt hour, then the electricity cost is lower. And it works out to something like 2 cents a mile or 3 cents a mile, and you're lowering the cost from 3 cents a mile to 2 cents a mile. So those costs should come down. So I'm struggling to figure out why Cybercab's cost per mile is higher than Model 3's cost per mile from 6 years ago. Is it inflation? Is there something else I'm missing? I'm not sure. And the tire cost, like the tires on 21-inch wheels are going to cost more than tires on 15-inch wheels. The angular momentum of the mass of the wheel is going to use more energy than a 15-inch wheel. I'm a little puzzled. Like, did they do this for look? I was actually kind of hoping they would have like a very utilitarian looking vehicle that Wall Street would complain about, oh, that thing looks ugly. Because if you're not selling the car, you don't necessarily care how it looks. You're selling the ride. The rider doesn't care whether he gets in a Prius or a Cybercab or some SUV. If he just wants to get where he wants to go, as long as it's a reasonable car, they don't care. So I'm a little surprised they went for this far on the aesthetic. There may be some explanations of why they went with this particular aesthetic. They may have a lower coefficient of drag, for example. And those wheel covers, I'm not sure whether those are going to be real or whether that's just showing off. Then he said 20 cents per mile, and then the ride price might be 30 or 40 cents a mile. Well, if 50% of your miles are dead miles and your cost is 20 cents a mile, then your ride price has to be more than 40 cents a mile because you have to make a profit, right? So it's 20 cents a mile. If it was 20 cents per paid mile, you probably want 25 cents a mile paid. If it's 20 cents per mile and half the miles are unpaid, then your cost per paid mile is 40 cents a mile, and you probably need to get 50 cents a mile in order for it to make sense. Now, long run, in the short to medium term, robotaxi rides are going to be more than $1 a mile. So whether you're 40 cents a mile or 20 cents a mile or whatever, you're still making a profit. But the lower you can drive that cost per mile down, the more profit you can make at a given price, and the more you can be competitive at lower and lower price points. So it may be that Tesla's plan is, okay, we've got another vehicle coming in 2028 or 2030 that's going to really drive the cost per mile down lower. We don't need to drive the cost per mile down that low yet. I'm not sure what the thinking is there. That's my biggest surprise, is that this thing is not as low cost per mile as I expected. I thought that was the primary goal of Cybercab. And, they went with the two-seater. I guess that lowers cost, right? You only have to put 2 seats in instead of 4 or 5. But still, again, why is this cost so much? Why is he saying this is going to be $30,000? How are they not lowering the price more? And there was no technical details. There was no curb weight. There was no breakdown of what the unbox process is going to be and how that's going to make things more efficient. There's no length, width, height, no miles per kilowatt hour. There was no detail that I was hoping to get out of this event.
So yes, and you will be able to buy one.
That was also a little bit of a surprise. You will be able to buy one. My expectation was that Tesla was going to run its own fleet. And maybe Tesla would sell to large fleets. But selling to individual consumers, I'm not sure that makes sense. If you are Tesla and you can run it in your own fleet and you can make $50,000 a year off the vehicle, why would you sell it to someone else for $30,000? If you run it in your own robotaxi fleet, it runs 16 hours a day, 18 hours a day. If I buy it, I might use it 2 hours a day. I might not maximize its use. If you want to maximize the use, you want to see this thing going more. You want to see more hours, and individual ownership probably leads to less hours on the road. That's maybe Elon has the theory that once you have it, you're going to run it as much as possible. And the other thing is, I think the economies of scale are going to favor large fleets. Large fleets are going to be able to manage these things more efficiently than individual owners. Now, maybe you buy 10 and you build your own little mini fleet operation. But even then, somebody who's got a fleet of 100 is probably going to be more efficient than your fleet of 10.
We expect the cost to be below $30,000.
So below $30,000, what does that mean? I thought they were aiming for half the footprint, double the volume, half the cost. That's what Drew Baglino said at I don't know if it was Investor Day or at a shareholder presentation or earnings call or whatever. But Baglino said half the factory footprint, twice the volume, half the cost. Half the cost would mean a price point at like $20,000. I was thinking they were shooting for under $20,000. So I'm a little, if you want to compete here in Thailand, where a BYD Dolphin, this is a much nicer vehicle than a BYD Dolphin. I'm not saying it's, or a BYD Atto 3, let's say. But the BYD Atto 3 and the Dolphin seat 4 or 5. You're only going to seat 2 people. How many people in Thailand are going to buy a vehicle only seats 2 people? I'm not sure. And at a $30,000 price point, say, when I can buy a 5-passenger BYD Atto 3 for under $25,000, I think you got some issues here. Now, maybe the way this is configured, you can put in a back seat. Maybe, right, the one they showed is a 2-seater, but they intend to have a 4-seater. It's not clear.
To be in production with the Cybercab, which is really highly optimized for autonomous transport, in probably, well, I tend to be a little optimistic with timeframes. In 2026, before 2027, let me put it that way.
So this is not something new. Tesla has seemed to, I think Tesla indicated before that Robotaxi or Cybercab would be produced in 2026. So this isn't just Elon saying it. When Elon gives a timeline, it's Elon time, but if the Tesla team has said it. So I think this vehicle is likely to be manufactured in 2026. And I will just say, like Elon said, highly optimized for autonomous driving. I'm not convinced of that. Like, if you're highly optimized for autonomous driving, if you mean optimized in terms of cost, what I saw, I think you could do better. You could do better. I would make it small. Again, Tesla team knows better than I do. I'm not trying to say the Tesla team doesn't know what they're doing. I'm not trying to say I'm smart. I got smarter than Elon disease. My gut would have been make it smaller, make it lighter, make the wheels smaller, make the tires smaller, do other things to reduce cost, get it under $20,000, and then talk about the efficiency. How efficient is this going to be in terms of miles per kilowatt hour? Are they going to get to 7 miles a kilowatt hour, 6 miles a kilowatt hour? If Model 3 is approaching 5 miles a kilowatt hour, how much better is this going to be? It wasn't clear. They didn't even try to explain that. And I don't know if we're going to get that at some point, or we're not going to get that until 2026. But that, you're not highly optimized for autonomous transport if you're not really pushing to reduce cost per mile. And the way he described it, it didn't sound like they went as far as I hope they would to reduce cost per mile. That doesn't mean they can't do it at a future date, and no one else is close, so they don't have to worry about competition in that sense. It's just if you want to maximize profit, the writer doesn't care how cool the car looks. Get me from point A to point B. So I don't understand that, they didn't explain it. I don't understand the business case for this as opposed to something that's less expensive and looks less cool. You want to look cool because the future should look like the future. You could have a look like the future that's more cost effective. And I'm sure that the Tesla team thought about this a lot, and they have reasons why they did it the way they did it. It's just my take. I don't understand why they did it this way.
We'll make this vehicle in very high volume, and but well before that, you'll experience a robotic taxi via the Model 3 and Model Y program, and Model S and X too. But your 3 and Y will achieve unsupervised full self-driving with permission in wherever regulators essentially approve it in the U.S. and then to follow in outside the U.S.
So I don't remember if I have this in the clips. Elon said that they would start doing fully autonomous as an unsupervised FSD in Texas and California sometime next year, and then they would expand from there. So I'm not surprised about California. I guess I shouldn't be surprised about Texas because Tesla is based in Texas. I expect Florida to be fairly early. I expect Las Vegas to be a prime candidate because that's where the Boring Company is located. And I also think Las Vegas and Orlando, 2 big convention centers, those are natural places where you want to operate because people are coming from all over the country to Las Vegas and Orlando more than any other cities in America. You got Disney World, you got Vegas casinos, and you got convention centers. So, and Universal Studios in Orlando, there's all these things that bring people to these cities. So a lot of people are going to experience Robotaxi coming from the airport and so on. And so that will make them push to get it in their own home city. So, getting it working right in California and Texas makes sense. And I think you will see quickly spread to Florida and Las Vegas and then the rest of the country. And I wonder if China will happen quicker. He sounded like California and Texas will happen first, and then more in the US and then other countries. I think China wants this badly. I think it will happen quicker in China than people realize. And maybe he's soft pedaling that. I don't know.
Yes. All our cars are basically, all cars that we make. The Model 3 and Model Y and S and X that we make today will be capable of full autonomy unsupervised.
So this is a point that if people are looking closely, they're going to say, wait a minute, the ones you're making today, which are hardware 4, will be capable of fully unsupervised. He didn't say the ones we were making before with hardware 3 will be capable of fully unsupervised. And the people who are hardware 3 owners might be flipping out at the way he said that. I didn't hear anybody complain about it yet, but my gut hunch is that that's going to be like a pain point for a lot of people who have hardware 3 cars. Is there's a concern, and I think they're wrong, and I think hardware 3 will be capable of fully unsupervised full autonomy. I've had a lot of conversation with that, with a lot of people who understand this AI stuff better than I do, especially James Douma. There's a lot of potential in the hardware 3 chip to be able to do everything that needs to be done. And the hardware 4 chip will be better at it, but the hardware 3 chip should be good enough. But the way he said it here, not clear. And I would have been more careful in how I said that to say hardware 3 too, but no one asked. There wasn't an opportunity to ask. Maybe it'll be asked at the shareholder earnings call in about a week or two.
Now, we are going to actually overspec the computer for the Cybercab. So our AI5 computer will be somewhat overspec'd. And because I think there's actually also an opportunity, sort of like in Amazon Web Services, where if the car is driving for 50 hours a week, there's still over 100 hours left. And there's a potential there to have a massive amount of distributed inference compute, where if you've got, like, say, a fleet of 100 million vehicles and a kilowatt of efficient inference compute, you have 100 gigawatts of compute, which is really quite substantial.
So if you caught that, a fleet of 100 million vehicles. He's predicting, like, he casually predicted that Tesla would have a fleet of 100 million vehicles on the road with hardware 5 chips. They're going to make 100 million Cybercabs. When he says we're going to make them in volume, that's some serious volume right there. So that's something I don't think a lot of people picked up on. I didn't hear anybody talk about it. 100 million vehicles. Now, there's a side point there that the AI5 chip that will be, so Cybercab is not being manufactured till 2026 because the AI hardware that's intended for it is not ready yet. That AI hardware will be ready in 2026. And so we'll see the AI5 chip in the Cybercab in 2026. And from an investor perspective, not from a car enthusiast perspective, the ability of the car's AI hardware to do additional work while the car is not driving is significantly valuable. And he did say a kilowatt per car, and I think the spec on the AI5 chip was more like 700 watts or 800 watts. So he was spitballing there a little bit of order of magnitude stuff. But I think we're talking about, 100 million cars, 100 gigawatts of compute. That's a lot of compute. And we don't know how much demand there's going to be for inference compute in 5 years. But the expectation for people in the AI community is there's a huge demand for that, and that will be very valuable. How valuable, I don't know. How much is the value per car? Probably not very much. Maybe it's $100 a year per car. But you add it up over 100 million cars, and that adds up to a lot of money. I think that's $10 billion, right? At $10 billion a year. Still not that much, really, compared to everything else we're talking about, but nothing to sneeze at.
And it's really high time we did this, is inductive charging. So the Robotaxi has no plug. It just goes over the inductive charger and charges.
He talked about the inductive charging in the talk, but I don't think they showed any video of the inductive charging, and instead they showed automatic cleaning, so that the way the vehicle is designed will make it easy for automated cleaning, some sort of robotic. Notice it's not an Optimus that's vacuuming the car. They seem to have come up with some sort of automated device that knows how to flip up the cup holders and then go through the car and vacuum the car and clean the car. And that makes it easy to clean the car more efficiently, lowers the cost. And that's an important operating cost for a robotaxi, is if it's easy to clean quickly, then the vehicle gets back into use quickly and your cost of cleaning it is lower because you're not paying a guy to go in the car and clean it. Now, I think what he said was there's no charge port. So it may be that Cybercab only charges inductively. They did buy an inductive charging company, I think, from Germany. So they may be working on that inductive charging technology. Then the question is, are they going to be able to get up to 250 kilowatts with inductive charging? Because I believe that company was only around maybe 16 or 32 kilowatts. So you really got to improve your engineering to get the charge rate up. Or maybe they've decided it doesn't need to charge that fast. You can sort of picture a charging station for Cybercabs. It would probably take up less space than superchargers. It would be easier to navigate. You're not going to need humans or robots to plug it in or unplug it. I'm not sure how much of an advantage that is, because if Optimus is cheap and you could just have one Optimus standing at a supercharger station, walking around, plugging and unplugging robotaxis, how much of an advantage is it to have inductive charging? But I think there's probably some significant advantages, and probably in manufacturing cost. Manufacturing it for inductive charging is probably less than manufacturing it for charging in a charge port. There may be some additional cost savings there as well. And maybe the manufacturing of the inductive chargers themselves might be cheaper than the manufacturing of the superchargers, and the installation cost, putting them in an inductive charging station, that cost might be lower than setting up a supercharger station. And there's probably less risk of vandalism and other, maintenance issues. The uptime would be higher. These are all theories, but I think this makes a lot of sense. They didn't give us a lot of details. They didn't give us specs, so we don't know what's the charge rate of the inductive charging. We don't know the answer to that yet. There's a lot of things missing that nerds like me are frustrated about. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
In the cities that we live in. So that would be quite fantastic. Oh, and also, what happens if you need a vehicle that is bigger than a Model Y?
This is the Robovan, and some things to notice. It's very, very futuristic looking. You don't see the wheels. The wheels are covered by the exterior of the vehicle. And my take on this is there's no way they're building it like this because the ground clearance is, maybe 2 inches. And you're going to need at least 5 or 6 inches of ground clearance for this thing, maybe more. With a vehicle that long, you probably need even more ground clearance. So there's some things about this that are overly futuristic and not realistic, but it does look super cool. And the interior, you'll see in a minute, looks super cool.
The Robovan. The Robovan is, we're going to make this, and it's going to look like that. Now, can you imagine going down the streets and you see this coming towards you? That'd be sick. So this can carry up to 20 people, and it can also transport goods. So you can configure it for goods transport within a city, or transport of up to 20 people at a time. So this is gonna...
So it looks like this particular version seats 16 people. You can easily see them squeezing in more seats and getting 20. And you can easily see this vehicle being used for commercial cargo, like a commercial van, like a Sprinter van. I think there's a lot of ways that you could see this making a lot of sense. Looks cool. No hint on when they're going to make this. No hint on what it's going to cost. I think he says at some point that he expects rides would be like 5 or 10 cents a mile as compared to what, 40 cents a mile or 50 cents a mile in the Cybercab. So of course you have to share the rides with other people. It's not as convenient maybe, but that just gives you some idea of what they're thinking.
Robovan is what's gonna solve for high density. So if you want to take a sports team somewhere, or you're looking to really get the cost of travel down to, I don't know, 5-10 cents a mile, then you can use the Robovan.
Just to be clear, I want one. I showed it to my wife. She wants one. If you can deliver this thing at a reasonable price point, like, is this going to be as expensive as a Model X? Is it going to be $100,000? I don't think you're getting this for 50 grand, right? So how much does this thing cost? We didn't get that out of this event. And I could see, making this configurable, and this is the RV of all RVs. This is the mother of all RVs. Every Tesla nerd who wants to have an RV to go on trips with, this is it. This is our dream. So we want to see this made, being able to carry, 8 people with us where we want to go, and being able to fold seats down and put beds in, and maybe put a little kitchen in, or who knows what you can do with this thing. A lot of people are going to have a lot of fun with this. If and when this actually happens. He did say it's going to happen. They are going to build this, but when and how much is it going to cost? That stuff is way out there in the future. My guess is if they're going to start making Cybercab in 2026, we don't see this thing in production until 2028. And that's a little disappointing because the market for vans, and I will say this, like, I think the AI team is executing super well. I think the supercharger team, in terms of getting superchargers out there, is doing really well. I think the improvements in Model 3 are really special. But I'm a little disappointed. Like, I'm a huge Tesla fan, and there's reasons why they do what they do. And if you're heading towards Robotaxi, maybe it's not that important to come up with new models. But I'm a little disappointed that we're not seeing something more. Tesla, and I think this was Q1 2024, said, we've updated our future vehicle lineup to accelerate the launch of new models ahead of our previously committed start of production in the second half of 2025. These new vehicles, including more affordable models, will utilize aspects of the next generation platform, that's Cybercab, as well as aspects of our current platforms, and will be able to be produced on the same manufacturing lines as our current vehicle lineup. This update may result in achieving less cost reduction than previously expected, but enables us to prudently grow our vehicle volumes in a more capex efficient manner during uncertain times. This will help utilize our currently expected maximum capacity of close to 3 million vehicles, enabling more than 50% growth, and our purpose-built Robotaxi Cybercab will continue to pursue a revolutionary unboxed manufacturing strategy. Well, wait a minute. I'd swear they said at some point that these new vehicles were coming end of this year, early next year. Well, we're almost at the end of this year. We're in Q4. We have no hint that they're actually manufacturing anything differently in any of the Tesla factories. Not to say that it's not happening. We just don't have any hint of it. What are they going to do with the massively underutilized? And these are questions that hopefully will be, some of them at least will be asked at the next earnings call. What are they doing with the massively underutilized S and X line in Fremont? where, what lines are they going to use? What happened to the new vehicles that they told us about in Q1, and I think they told us again in Q2? What happened to these new vehicles that are supposed to be coming? Where are they? When are we going to see them? We don't have any hint of that. What are they? What are they going to be? I like the Model Y XL concept, to provide a legit third row vehicle that, Model X is just too expensive for, and apparently as much as I love the Model X, not enough people want it. So a $60,000 third row vehicle would be nice based on Model Y. A smaller Model Y, who knows what's coming, but we don't know what's coming and we haven't seen it yet. And this to me feels like maybe the vehicle manufacturing team is not executing as much as strongly as I would hope for, or maybe or more likely I just don't understand the plan. But I would like to see more there. If your expectation is, hey, none of this stuff matters once we get Robotaxi, like we're not going to invest money in CapEx in building out factory lines or changing factory lines because we want to invest every penny we can in AI hardware so we can get our FSD working. Okay, that's a strategy I can buy. I think that should be spelled out more, but that's a strategy I can buy. We've decided not, but you just told us we were investing something in these lines to put out new vehicles. Where are they? We don't see them yet. Maybe I'm being impatient. I think a lot of other people are way more impatient than me. That's just something again, it's not important for my long-term valuation because my long-term valuation is based on Robotaxi and Optimus. And I think what we saw with Robotaxi and Optimus was good. Not exactly what I was hoping for, but way good enough. So I think we're okay there.
Some people call it the Robovan, but so yeah. One of the things that we want to do, and we've seen this with the Cybertruck, is we want to change the look of the roads.
They definitely achieved the future should look like the future. I will give Elon that. You achieved it. That vehicle, Cybercab, Cybertruck, the future is starting to look like the future. I'm really pleased with that. In terms of branding, this is awesome. But if we're not going to see that vehicle, like, when is the future coming? We don't know that. And I don't fault them for that. But, telling us when that van is coming is not going to cannibalize any existing Tesla vehicles. If you tell us we're going to be making this vehicle for $80,000 in 2027, that's not going to hurt sales of any other Tesla. And it might hurt sales of other vehicles from other companies. So it would be nice to get more color on the Robovan. But that vehicle can't, because there's no steering wheel and no pedals in that vehicle can't happen until you have full autonomy. So we have full autonomy starting in late 2025. You get it really dialed in 2026. So maybe that Robovan is 2027. That's my guess.
It's just a robot with arms and legs instead of a robot with wheels. And we've made a lot of progress with Optimus. And as you can see, we started up with someone in a robot suit, sort of down, and then we've progressed dramatically year after year. So if you extrapolate this, you're really going to have something spectacular, something that anyone could own.
So Elon has this vision of the future of Optimus. This is great. We got to see a bunch of Optimuses walking around the event. The Optimuses were doing a bunch of things at the event. They were not truly interacting with people. It looked like each Optimus had a handler, and the handler was able to give it commands. It's not like the individual would walk up to Optimus and say, hey, Optimus, can I have this? And Optimus would do what the person said. There was a handler who was directing what every Optimus did, but they looked very fluid in their motion. It's also not clear, is this the new, what I was expecting was they were going to present, here is Generation 1 production Optimus, and here's the manufacturing plan. I was expecting with Cybercab, here's Cybercab, here's the details, here's the manufacturing plan, here's the unbox process. We didn't get any of that. It's not clear to me whether this is the production intent version of Optimus or if this is the previous generation of Optimus and there's a new version that's under development. Because Elon said that they had a prototype ready when he was in the All-In pod not that long ago. So what's the path for that? When do they start manufacturing? We don't have any of that. My expectation is that they start manufacturing the first generation of production Optimus soon, and it starts working in Tesla factories. If it's already working in Tesla factories, but it starts doing more serious work in Tesla factories end of this year into next year. And then at some point they do a second generation Optimus, and that one gets sold to other customers. And then third generation is mass produced in high volume. And that's, 4 or 5 years from now, 6 years from now. we just didn't get, like, this is like, for me, as somebody who nerds out on this stuff and wants details, we did not get details. We got to see Optimus. It moves well. His point, hey, back when we first introduced Optimus, it was a guy in a suit. Now you have actual robots walking around events, sort of interacting with people, very fluid motion, very impressive in that sense. But the AI still needs a lot of training. And this is why you need a lot of bots. You need a lot of bots so you can expose them to, you can generate a lot of data so you can train on your data. So that, the challenge of, like, how do we build enough bots and give them enough tasks so that we can then train to improve the bots, that's a whole new field of work that's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of time.
So you can have your own personal R2-D2 C3PO. And I think at scale, this would cost something like, I don't know, $20,000, $30,000.
That's striking that he's at $20,000 or $30,000. Optimus is going to weigh about 50 kilograms, 125 pounds, something in that ballpark, 110, 120 pounds. And a car weighs 4,000 pounds, 1,500 kilograms. Optimus has 2.3 kilowatt hours of batteries. A car has 60, 70, 80 kilowatt hours of batteries. I would expect that Optimus would cost significantly less than a car to build when you're at scale. So for him to say at scale it's going to be $20,000 to $30,000. Now maybe he's saying they're going to sell it for $20,000 to $30,000, but their manufacturing cost should be less than $10,000. Elon talks, maybe it's coming up. Everybody's going to want one. I'm here in Thailand. People aren't dropping $20,000 or $30,000 on a robot. My expectation is that robotics will spread in the wealthy world first. Humanoid robots and cybercabs will spread in the wealthy world first, where people are used to paying $50 for a ride from the airport. Giving them a ride for $20 from the airport home is going to be a great deal. Here in Thailand, I pay $10 for a taxi ride home from the airport. So giving me a robotaxi ride for $20 is not a plus. Package delivery, the cost of human labor in countries like Thailand and Vietnam and most of the rest of the world in terms of population, India, is much, much lower. So I expect to see this technology play out in wealthy countries like the United States, Canada, Europe, Australia, Singapore, to some extent Japan. Countries like that will see this first, and it will take a while for this technology to spread to poorer countries. And I wonder if that will exacerbate the divide between wealthy countries and poor countries. Eventually they'll catch up, but it may, whatever new technology is coming out later will also hit rich countries first. So it's going to be interesting to see that from a sociological perspective. Is the divide going to narrow, or is the divide going to grow? I'm not really worried about it. It's just kind of interesting.
It'll take us a minute to get to the long term, but fundamentally at scale, the Optimus robot, you should be able to buy an Optimus robot for, I think, probably $20,000 to $30,000 long term.
And just to be clear, the average income in Thailand, I think, is the GDP per capita is $7,000 a year. So where in America it's like $60,000 a year, and people buy, and there are people with $30,000 cars here. It's just most people can't afford one. Most people can't buy $30,000 cars here. Buying a $30,000 robot is just, sort of like, how are we doing that? My wife is not from a wealthy family, and she could see the value that a robot would provide, but the cost is really high. So it's hard to see that. And again, like with Cybercab, I expect Tesla to drive the cost down. Now, it's not really the cost of the hardware that I see being the real cost. It's the value generated by the robot means that companies will pay a lot of money for this robot. And if I'm Tesla, I'm selling to companies who are paying me $100,000 rather than selling to individuals for $30,000. And it's going to take a long time to manufacture enough robots to satisfy the demand from companies that are willing to pay $100,000 before you're going to get to the point that you're going to be selling them for $30,000 or $20,000. Cost of manufacture should still be $5,000 or $10,000, and Tesla makes massive profits. As a shareholder, I love that. But the idea that this spreads to middle-income people in developing countries, it's a really long way off. And you're gonna have you're not gonna do it at a price point of $30,000, maybe $10,000, maybe a neighborhood buys a couple. We'll see. I don't know how that business model works in countries like this.
It'll basically do anything you want. So it can be a teacher, babysit your kids. It can walk your dog, mow your lawn, get the groceries, just be your friend, serve drinks, whatever you can think of, it will do. And yeah, it's going to be awesome. I think this will be the biggest product ever of any kind.
Yeah, and Elon goes into this point like everybody's going to want one. Well, there's 8 billion people, so that's 8 billion robots. I don't think it's quite that simple. I think seniors in assisted living facilities aren't going to be buying one for themselves. I think babies aren't going to be buying them. But on the other hand, if you're, I think it'll be companies that will buy many. You know, there will be companies that will have 10 robots for every human. You go into space, you're going to have at least 10 robots for every human on the moon and Mars, maybe 100 robots for every human on the moon and Mars. So there's a lot of potential for robots to do a lot in other contexts, in orbit as well. A lot of potential for this to be very high volume product. And there's no one on the horizon. You can talk about Figure One or whatever. There's nobody on the horizon who has anything close to what Tesla has with Optimus. This is, off the charts good.
That Optimus is not a canned video. It's not walled off. The Optimus robots will walk among you. Please be nice to the Optimus robots.
I didn't bother making the video with all that video. If you go watch the original video, those Optimus bots are all over the event. They're doing all kinds of things in front of people, around people. It's not, some staged. I mean, I think to some extent it's a stage demo, but it's a very complex stage demo. And I think the Optimus has to be very capable to be able to do the things that they staged. So it's very, very promising in that respect.
So you'll be able to walk right up to them and they'll serve drinks at the bar. And you'll directly, I mean, that's just, it's a wild experience just to have humanoid robots and they're there, you're just in front of you. So let's party.
It's great that Tesla team put this together. They put a lot of resources into this. They apparently took over a section of Warner Brothers Studios for 3 months to get this together. Again, that's kind of like from my nerd perspective, it's like, well, I didn't get a lot. I didn't attend the event, right? I watched the event. I like the detail that we used to get from Tesla presentations. I think there's reasons why they're not giving detail. I think the theory became, and they said this at one point, they were doing these events and they were giving their competition too much information. And they could see that the competition was copying them too much. Not that they don't want the competition to learn from them, but maybe they don't want to make it that easy. I remember when I went to Cyber Rodeo, they put a tremendous amount into Cyber Rodeo. They must have spent a crazy amount of money. So they spent a crazy amount of money on this. I'm curious to see what was the intent. Is this a recruiting event? Sometimes they do these events and they're doing it for recruiting. I don't think this had a recruiting purpose. I think maybe this is a brand building and strengthening loyalty among the faithful like me. And I'm loyal anyway, so I don't know if that's valuable. I think it was fun for the Tesla team. I definitely heard from people that the Tesla team was really excited about this event. And I'm excited about Optimus. I'm excited about Cybercab. I'm excited about FSD and Robotaxi. I'm excited about Robovan. I'm excited about all this stuff. Just for me, damn, I wanted more detail. And I'm not so sure that they're focused as much as they should be on get the cost of that down. Deliver something at lower cost. Because are they really drilling down to lower costs as much as possible? Or is he sandbagging? Maybe he's sandbagging. Maybe when he says 20 cents a mile, maybe it's really 8 cents a mile and he's just sandbagging. I don't know. I'm curious what you think. Please let me know. If you're watching this on X, let me know in reply to the post. If you're watching this on YouTube, let me know in the comments. Please check out the t-shirts at elonbits.com. Please support me as a YouTube channel member, as a subscriber on the X platform. Support me on the Daily Live, support me on Patreon. Check out the t-shirts, check out my other videos. Share this video, like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.